Some videos from this winter when I was up in Boston looking at the North Bennett Street School. I like to go back there and remember what I learned back then. One of the things was dating buildings, and this video is all about dating barns, right? How old they are. There's 3 different time periods of where these barns are. I date everything, right? It's one of the things I learned at North Bennett Street. Everything has a date. Everything has a timestamp and a clue. We're in a 1920s building, and I just look at all the stuff here, right? This molding and this trim, the bead board, right? Look at the glass in this old transom window, how it's wavy, right? All of those things are timestamps and clues for how old something is. And I walk into every building I go into, especially historic buildings, and I look at them and go, "That's new. That's different. That's right. Oh, look at that," right? All those things are timestamps and clues, whether it's the hardware, the glass, the moldings, the doors, whatever it is. So we're going to look at this video, and we're going to be dating barns. So check it out. At Build Show, we're at Preservation Carpentry 1. Beautiful New England day. A little bit of snow with Steve, and he is the instructor, right? And so we're looking at these barns. One of the things I'm always talking about is how do you date barns? How do you know things?
We're actually 12 miles south of Boston,
okay,
at a place called Brookwood Farm, which is owned by the state of Massachusetts through the division called Department of Conservation and Recreation. But prior to 1996, this was a privately owned estate of 60 acres, owned by a man named Henry Howe. It tells a story of the American farmer.
Yeah.
These are not things that the English tradition of the way in which that barn was built in the 18th century is very English. It stood on a dry-laid, low foundation with no basement as a standalone purpose-built building, probably to house oxen and hay on a loft above. That's all it did. And the English in the 18th century, our tradition of building barns was always dated to what English did, which is separate little purpose-built buildings on a farm setting. What the Americans did is start to move buildings and add them into compounds. They had no hesitation of moving these buildings together, even attaching them to the back of the main house,
right,
the farmer's house,
yep,
so that in the winter, like we're starting here, you can go from your home out to feed the cows in the building without going outside.
Let's go through and we'll just look at some of the different construction methods that help us date it, right? To help us figure that out. Come on. So we're now in the newest building, 1930s, 40s?
30s and 40s.
Okay. And how do you date this? How do we know that it's from that period?
If you come in here, we can see that the framing is dimensional. Right? These are all roughly 2x. They're also sawn with the saw marks of either a bandsaw or a circular saw.
These rings here, you can see that it's a circular motion that's coming across these things,
right,
as opposed to a
yeah, and this even shows the typical cross hatching.
Right.
What's going on there are 2 blades. There's a primary blade that might be about 55 inches in diameter that is cutting, but then there's another blade that's coming in at 90 degrees, a smaller diameter that's cutting at another angle. And so when they come together, sometimes you find them on the edge of a board. That plus the even layout of the spacing, plus the bracing. Diagonal bracing, like this signature of early 20th century. So this is 20th century. There's no question. It's not 19th century.
And we know the purpose of the barn because of these small windows here.
Yeah. So these signature windows coming down with one of these little hoods, and the hoods actually at one time aligned to slots in the floor above where they're storing hay. So we're thinking that it's not just a window, but it's a trough for them to drop hay down into what were little stalls. Yeah. So the height of the window might say horse barn. I was told cow, but the height of the window might be one or the other. But a bunch of stalls running down the length of this building.
Right. So we're looking at a World War II building-ish kind of thing, and we can tell because of the lumber pretty quickly, yep, windows, the siding, this one by beaded siding. Right. So let's go look at the next building. It's sure, 1910.
Around 1910.
And then we can kind of see it, and we'll yes, see the clues there.
That's right.
So we've now come upstairs. We're still in the newest building, the World War II building, and this here is the 1910 building, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that this was drug up from below because you see the siding here and the siding there, the 2 barns, right?
That's right. What we're looking at here is somebody cut through the sidewall of this is a knee wall. So this is the height of the plate, and then the roof begins.
Right.
You can see above my head, this
Right.
angle.
Yeah.
So this is a standalone building,
Right.
and we know that because between this tiny space between this wall, there's shingles here and here, just inches away from each other, fully shingled all the way down. So they had to live independently out in the weather.
Right.
And this building had no choice but to have been dragged up, just as they said, and attached
Tied
to the
together,
other, tied
right.
together. Then they cut open. They built a cricket. This is the tying of the two
Right.
opposing ridges.
Right.
They built one over onto the ridge of the opposing angle, and they cut through, and now they were onto the second floor with just this step.
Which is a really an American thing to do, right? Really
That's
just,
right.
you know, make a usable space.
That's
kinda
right. All
tie buildings
multiple
together.
purpose
Yeah.
functions under one continuous space that you can move from one space to the other. This has some indications of its earlier design, with the heavier posts in the corners, diagonal bracing that's coming up. So it's being hidden by some supplies here.
So we're now standing in the newest barn, the thing they built. I mean,
That's
the
right.
contrast between, you know, this new construction, right, and what they did there. But tell me, this is where you found the original barn,
That's right.
And so what was here?
Underneath this concrete slab is the remnants of a foundation that we really studied. That once we uncovered the foundation, because we moved the barn off of it, we took the barn down after documenting it and tagging all the frame, punching all the pins out, and taking the timbers apart, doing the dendrochronology, and then doing the repairs piece by piece, much like you saw Michael doing
Right.
on the Hanover barn.
One of the things I always tell people is that, you know, everything dates itself. Something I
It
learned
does,
from,
even stone.
from our instructor, Robert Adam.
That's right.
Steve and I both went to the preservation program. And you're finding even this quarry, right? Even the way they broke the quarry
That's right.
and tells a story,
You
right?
could tell that this wasn't a field stone that came out of the ground. It
Right.
was worked. It had all the tool marks of being drilled and being split with feathers and wedges, and that was most of the makeup of this granite foundation.
So tell us about, you've got these the white pine boards. We're talking,
Yeah.
go back to the dating thing, right? You see there are no circular saw marks
Right.
there. There's no...
Now these are all reproduction. These are boards that were milled here by us, hiring a sawyer with a trailered behind sawmill, and students in support of that sawyer sawing boards. And all of these tall boards that run, I don't know, 16 feet, all the boards that are surrounding this building are eastern white pine, and that's what we found on the original barn. They also had the telltale marks of not modern technology on them, but something called an up and down water-powered sawmill, or what we might call a sash saw. So it's a 7-foot blade with teeth about this big that are moving up and down like a jigsaw, up and down, and powered by a water wheel at a sawmill. Now, what are we going to do? We weren't going to, circular saw wasn't going to work. We were not going to saw these out. We didn't want that on our barn. So working with the sawyer, he took a pair of pliers, and he took a couple of teeth,
and
of his
out.
bandsaw, and he twisted them out so that every so often it would score a line in the face of the boards to replicate what looked like the up and down sash saw. It was great that he'd be willing to do that for us.